Hi, what's your name?
My name is Mike Majorana.
And what are you doing here?
I'm here because I support the fishermen. I started out in life being a fisherman, and I fished with my father, who was a sardine fisherman, and I had to drop out of college because when the sardine started moving south, it's hard to keep a crew. My father was short, and I fished with them. The sardines, not at all what's been contributed to the fishermen. The sardines moved as a normal, natural cycle that they learned later on. So what I witnessed was in 46 and 47. Before that, the sardines was typical. The year would start off with small sardine, and in 2 or 3 months they get larger. They had a 7-inch minimum. By the mid to end of the season, the sardines were over 7 inches, and they were all marketed. Under 7 inches, they were released. So the first part of the season, they released many hundreds of tons of sardines until they were able to get over 50%, the 7 inches. And about 46 and 47, the season started without the small sardine. And my father and the fishermen were wondering, and they said, well, maybe they'll come later on in the year. 47, they started off the same, and there was no young sardine. So they would say, well, they were wondering what happened, and by the mid of the year, the sardines, they couldn't find schools. And now when I'm talking about schools, the sardine fishermen never hauled out on 10, 15, 20 tons of fish, because they would lose the evening and lose the whole night. They waited until 50 to 100. So every boat let go 5 to 10 schools of fish that they found that were 15 to 20 to 25, and they would haul out on the 30, 40, 50 to 100 ton school. So many thousands of tons of fish were left in the water. However, the young sardines did not show up for 2 years, and then the 1 year they wanted a half season, they ran out of fish. They later found the fish down south by Big Sur. They fished periodically there for the next year or two, and farther south by Morro Bay, Hueneme, and the Channel Islands and San Pedro. And then when I had to drop out of school, I fished with my dad in San Pedro, and we followed the fish all the way down to San Diego. And I was there, and I saw with my own eyes the schools of fish move south of the border, and we were prevented from going into that area because the Mexican military Navy would confiscate the boats, and they'd lose the boats. So we ended up searching all north of the boundary until there were no more schools of fish, and they were all south, and we could see thousands of schools of fish south, and they were none on the north side, and that ended the fishing industry for the whole West Coast for the sardine. It was several years later, the scientists realized by taking core samples, they were doing oil sampling, oil coring in the Channel Island, and they went down to the 1300s, and they would find strata of scales, and they would find a period of no scales, a 40 to 50 year period, then the trickling of small amounts of scales, then heavy scales for another 50 years, and then the trickling back to no scales for another 50 years, and they concluded, and continually up to the time of the survey, that there was 50-year cycles that came about. The sardines disappeared in 48, 49. They showed up in 1989 and 1990, and they showed up as large sardines, not newly spawned sardines. They weren't young sardines. And then following that, 2 years, the young sardines showed up, showing the rebirth of sardines and the spawning. And as you well know, the sardines right now are plentiful, and the fishermen who got blamed for it, as nobody says that anymore. That's old news. That's been proven wrong. And what I see today, that continues to occur, and fishermen are being blamed for disappearance of fish that are unrelated to them. For instance, I went to a hearing, and the chief biologist from the sanctuary talked about a great herring industry that was in Monterey that got fished out, There was never a herring fishing in Monterey. There was never herring fish, not herring, strike that, hake fishing. There was never a hake industry in Monterey. The hake was an incidental catch at salmon trolling, and you would catch 2 or 3. They were unedible. They were unedible. They had a greasy diesel that they were unedible and a deteriorating, gamey taste that when they were caught, they were discarded. And I had in Europe, they're a prized fish. On the East Coast, they're a prized fish. But on the West Coast, they have this diesel, petroleum smell to them, and they're not. But they were never plentiful. There was never an industry there. And I informed the biologist after that her talk about that, and I didn't bring it up during the meeting because I didn't want to embarrass her. Today, I read the paper on that new shark exhibit at the aquarium, and they said they have to do something to protect them from being fished out. There has never been. I'm 75 years old. There has never been a fishery fishing shark. No fisherman that I know catches and sells shark. Sharks, when they're caught in the net, they're released. They're released overboard, and so that they don't get caught in the fish that gets scooped up in the boat. So that's another misleading call. Yeah, there are sharks that are fished for fins, but this is not in West Coast. It's not in our world. It doesn't belong. It's not anything that should be attached to the fishermen in the West Coast here. Yet the unknown person does not realize that and will assume it's correct. So all these misleading statements mislead the general public into an attitude against the fishermen. The fishermen are as natural in the water and the ocean as they are, as the sea lions are, as the whales are. They live off the resource that moves around and goes in cycles. They never fish out an area. They fish an area until a fishing grounds, until it reaches if and when it does, if it ever reaches a point of low yield, they move away from it. Because first of all, they're wasting their time, they're not making any money, they move away from it. Second of all, they look for better grounds, and they find better grounds. And so that area is left alone to restore itself, and there's a natural cycle a restoration as they move from fishing ground areas to discovery of new fishing ground areas. When I was fishing, we'd go from here to San Francisco, we'd go 50 miles out and 50 miles north and south looking for fish. They wouldn't be laying out at 10 and 15 tons full of sardines, as I mentioned before. And the same thing happened in the San Francisco area. They left hundreds of tons of fish over there. They came and fished in Monterey. But that was a cycle that occurred, and the fisherman was blamed for it. And today, a lot of things that are not related at all to the fishermen are being blamed for. So I would like to get that word out, and I'm here as a student of the fishing industry and a supporter of all these families of which I come from. And they're a beautiful family, and they have a bigger interest in the sustainability of the fish than anyone else in the world, because that's how they make their livelihood, that's how they make raise their children. And I thank you for being here and listening to our word. Thank you very much.